morning, everyone. Welcome to the Architects Digitalks. We have with us Tyrone, the Rainmaker. Tyrone, please go ahead and start introducing yourself. Tell us about yourself, your experience, what you do.
Yeah, no, thank you for having me. My name is Tyrone Rainmaker Matheson. I help owner-led B2B businesses to sell more to existing customers, expand into new markets, and get the capital that they need to exit. And we try to do that without them having to have a massive sales team or I call it a bloated marketing budget.
All right. Fantastic. All right. So let's get started on this with our first question for you. Can you share with us your journey into business development and what led you to specialize in strategic partnerships?
No, great question. I've been sort of on my own since about 2008. I could remember in the previous life, I was helping people to grow their business in the insurance world. And I think there was one day that I was doing a class session and I'm like, why am I teaching other people how to do this stuff? Why don't I go out there and do my own stuff? So that eventually led me into like leadership development related stuff with small business owners. I've just always had an interest with business owners. So I started selling leadership development programs to companies. And a few years of doing that, I was like, man, they're spending a lot of money, but they're not executing and doing the things that they're learning from me. I got to switch things up. So I left that industry. And then I started focusing on helping business owners to put systems and processes into their business. And then I quickly realized that I created a job for myself when I did that. So I started moving up to like, okay, how about strategy? Because of the way my brain thinks. So I started looking at, okay, I'm going to help them grow strategically, help them figure out, do they have the right people in their business? And then start bringing in other people or other service providers to help facilitate. And it was fun. I think after working with the client for about 2.5 years or 3 years that we were in their business, I'm like, okay, change management is like slow and my brain doesn't work at that speed. So what ended up happening is I've always been a connector.
Right.
And one of my partners to this day that I actually met on LinkedIn, I think probably over 10 years ago, he sent me down a rabbit hole. And when I went down that rabbit hole, I started to learn about joint ventures, joint venture marketing and strategic alliances and partnerships. And then I started to realize that a lot of the things that I do naturally, I could package and put under the strategic partnership framework. So that's sort of the rabbit hole that I've stayed in and I've been in, and it's just naturally leveraging all my gifts and skills that I've developed over the years.
Fantastic. Okay. So with all that experience and everything you've learned over the past lots of years, what common mistakes do business make when attempting to form strategic partnerships, and how can they avoid them? What's your advice to avoid some of these mistakes that you've seen people make over and over?
Yeah, I don't think a lot of business owners really understand partnerships. Like even if when I say the word partnerships, for some people positive things come as it relates to the word partnership, and for some negative things come with the term partnerships. For me, strategic partnerships has always been about leverage. What does someone have that I need, and what do I have that someone needs that I can give? And then to figure out what is that mutual exchange of how we're going to be able to exchange value with each other. So the common mistakes that I have seen with partnerships is lack of understanding of what partnerships really is. It's really just about leverage. Like how do you leverage something else, whether it's someone's time or their resources or their clients or their audience or something, to help you to get what you want or to help you to fulfill the vision that you want for yourself or for your business. And just understanding that definition, I think, would help people overcome a lot of the objections and challenges that they have around partnerships.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, that makes sense. But in partnerships, it's always that kind of relationship of, and I agree with you, because one of the things I find out the most when talking about partnerships is that with a partnership, you have to be willing to give to get something in return, right? And most people go in thinking, what am I going to get out of this, right? They're not thinking about what am I going to give so that I can get something in return. And so, yeah, definitely the mind set about partnerships, it's something that most people are not fully aware of.
No, I would agree with you. It's for myself. I say I'm here to serve. I'm here to give. I'm here to do whatever to help someone get whatever they're trying to accomplish. But you're absolutely correct. One of the challenges that I've seen around partnerships is people get into these partner type relationships and they wait and they're waiting for individuals to give to them. And one of the reverse strategies we do,
Hmm.
psychology, rule of reciprocation is give.
Absolutely. Give,
Give
yeah,
first
exactly.
without expecting, but we all know through the laws of the universe that at some point you will get back.
You will
So
get back.
it's just being patient with all of that
Yeah,
for sure.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Being patient, but that's something that most people don't have.
No, not at all. Especially in this day of instance, we want gratification and things quickly.
Yeah. It's not the long-term partnership, is what can I get now, right? Or how is this going to serve me today? Not a year or 2 years from now, but how fast can I get a return on this relationship? I think that's, where we all, because we've at one point or the other, I think we've all been guilty of doing something like this, right? What can I get something out of this today that will get me out of this, place where I'm stuck, or whatever the case might be, right? So yeah, it's difficult, because human behavior always tells you what can I get before the what can I give, and it gets us in trouble more often than we think.
It does.
Tell me a little bit more about your Rentmaker strategic partnership system and how it's helping businesses achieve faster growth. Like, what's your strategy? What's your system? Tell us about it.
Yeah, no, the system has been developed over years, right? This is like 16 plus years of figuring out what works and what doesn't work, and lots of reading. And there's actually a psychology play with a lot of the things that we do. So I know when people are typically looking for answers for themselves or for their business, they look externally.
Mm-hmm.
I know that they typically are looking for tangible versus intangible. So our system is based around psychology in terms of if I know a business owner is looking for all the answers on the outside, our strategy starts with, okay, what do you have on the inside? So we start looking at, an example would be current clients. What are you currently doing with your current clients? It's very expensive to go out there and always get new business. So you've
Absolutely.
already paid for that and you have existing clients you're working with. So what are other things that you can do directly or indirectly to provide value to that client? And I say directly and indirectly because directly
Mm-hmm.
could be your services and products.
Right.
Indirectly could be potential partners or partnerships that you have that provide complementary products and services to your existing customers, and it's just trying to figure out that value of exchange. So we always look at what are they currently sitting on internally. So current clients, past clients, unconverted opportunities that they have in their pipeline, or opportunities they may have lost at some point through their journey through the journey of prospecting and bringing leads in and so forth. So our system is designed around looking at the internal assets that they have. Um,
Mm-hmm.
Another example could be intellectual property that they have. Maybe there's a certain way they have a specific process that they do things within their organization specific to them. We try to look at all these different things that are outside of product and service that are
Mm-hmm.
potential revenue opportunities for companies. We find the lowest hanging fruits within that opportunity, and then we put a system or a set of processes behind that to turn that into money for that organization. So to answer your question, it's looking internally to see what they have that they're not fully monetizing or
Mm-hmm.
utilizing, and then turning that low-hanging fruit that we identify into something that's repeatable that can create revenue for them as an organization.
Very good. So, on that note, how do you identify hidden opportunities within those businesses that they can leverage for business growth, right?
No, it's actually, I try to keep things very simple with how I do things. So obviously with technology now, like with a chat GPT, very simple to do this exercise. But prior, what I would do is I'd have like the alphabet A to Z, and I'd go
Okay.
through what are the things in a business that they have that start with A. So you start looking at, and again, I'm looking for cost savings or revenue opportunities, right? So I look at accounts receivable, accounts payable. Do they have assets like inventory or resources internally? And I just go through the alphabet and just sort of create like my A's, my B's, my C's, and I just go
Right.
through it to see what. And this is helping me to figure out what are the assets that they have via my alphabet system. But now with technology, you sort of can leverage AI and so forth to help expedite that. But that's been the strategy to find the assets is my alphabet system. And then what I look from that is data. Do we have any data or anything in the organization that can help support that this is an asset that can be utilized or leveraged within the organization? If we don't, then we look at what are, like, when we have a clear picture of their ideal client profile, of who they're
Hmm.
going after. If they're looking at selling to their existing market, is this something that could add value to your existing market? Yes or no? If you're looking at getting into a new market, is this asset something that can help us to get into a new market that you're currently not in? And that's sort of the process that I use is look at what they have internally, figure out how does it provide value to their existing ICP, and then look at it. Is there an opportunity for us to get into new markets leveraging the assets that we have?
So you said something right at the beginning, um, that piqued my interest, and it's now with ChatGPT, let's call it with AI, that's much easier. So can you tell us what you're doing now? Because you just told us before. So how are you approaching this now that we have the help of AI?
Well, with AI, it's the access to information because I think before it used to be like a really custom approach. I'm in your business. This is the
Mm-hmm.
type of business, your industry that you're in, and then I'm going through my alphabet list to figure out what the opportunities are.
Right.
With AI, like in tools such as like Perplexity and all these other tools out there, now you can look at an industry and you can ask these questions and get the common types of assets that these businesses are typically sitting on and have AI provide you with that information. And then now you're just validating by
Mm-hmm.
taking that information that's being presented to you to see are those opportunities actually exist in this business that I'm working with, right? And then that sort of becomes your piece. So something that used to take, a longer period of time in order to identify those opportunities and to validate now
Mm-hmm.
is like a prompt and information. And now I'm just validating whether or not those opportunities are in the business. And my validation process is really about asking questions and of the owner or whoever else is in that organization to see, is this true? Is it
Right.
true? Yeah.
Okay, so now you're just using it more to validate information. And obviously, you still kind of follow that alphabet idea, but you're kind of leaning into the tools, the AI tools, to get more accurate and, I guess, validate that information faster.
That's all it is. And at the end of the day, like a lot of businesses, I would say businesses are the same. And the only thing
Hmm.
that really differentiates them is the product or service and that they generate or that they provide or produce, and
Hmm.
maybe their ideal client profile or their ideal client and who they look like. But in terms of the fundamentals of business, it's really product, problem solution. So the
Right.
client has a problem, you have a solution, and you have a business model to help bring that solution to that individual that has the problem. You have a system in place that helps you to identify where can you find these individuals and so forth around all of that stuff, right? So when you
Right.
go through that A to Z model, you typically have the same overlap over and over amongst different businesses because businesses are typically the same at the end of the day.
Very good. So, share with us a successful partnership you facilitated. Just give us an idea of what that looks like when you're working with companies and clients, and just the impact you had in your involvement with that business partnership deal.
No, What I can do is I can give you one that was it has two sides to this story. So there's a good side and then there's the bad side of this partnership. So this is
All
where it
right.
went right and when it went wrong with the exact same partnership. So I love working with B2B organizations, and this particular one was a startup. And I don't mind startups. I just have a different approach with startups. So this particular startup, I won't go into their name or anything of that nature, but they had a
Of course.
specialty working in the automotive aftermarket industry. And one of their strategies that they were doing from a business development, business growth standpoint, according to their business model, for what they had, they were knocking on the doors of independent garage repair shops, and they were
Right.
just to sell their service into that model. So when I had a conversation with them, I'm like if your model is this, wouldn't it be advantageous if we had a partnership with an organization that already had those doors? All those
Right.
doors were already open. You didn't have to go knock on them. They said yes. So what they didn't know is I have a relationship with a global organization, and that global organization is that aftermarket automotive world that this company
Client.
would. So what I ended up doing
Perfect
is
fit.
it was a perfect fit. So I had a conversation with the CEO of this organization and pitched it, introduced him to the startup, and he's like, yes, because why did they say yes? They said yes because for them, they did not have the technology R&D department for their organization. This startup was R&D, research and development. It was technology for their organization. So for them, it's like, yes, here's a company that's already spent the money. They've already built something, and now they're looking for distribution. They're looking for doors to knock on. So they were open. I think we met with everyone in C-suite. Fast, to pretty much agreement was signed. The positive that came out of this was a startup that was knocking on individual doors, got a partnership with a global organization that had the ability to just blow up this startup in a good way in terms of making money. Where this fell apart, it fell apart. The startup, I think, overpromised or was overconfident in their abilities to deliver.
Oh, that happens so often.
And what ended up happening, the global organization had some very specific requests of this partnership. In order for us
Right.
to go global, we need you to
Do
make your
ABC.
do
Right.
ABC. And once you do that, and we can test it into this particular market, then we can launch it with our annual conference, and we can
Mm-hmm.
look at expanding it and going from there. All they had to do was the ABC, which they didn't do. And because they didn't do that ABC, the whole deal fell
The
apart.
partnership fell apart.
It fell apart. And that was it. So we took
Oh,
them from
no.
struggling startup, plugged them into an ecosystem where they had distribution that they would never have to gone anywhere ever. They
The
would have
gate was
literally
so
been,
big,
it was so
and
big, they
they.
just had to plug in. And they just had to do that. It was like one or two things that they said they could do, but they couldn't deliver on. And that was it. That partnership ended. So it was good at the time because it showed me the power of when you identify a need
Mhm.
and there's an organization that you have the ability to solve that problem by plugging in and really truly solving that problem. Big companies are open to having those conversations if it's going to help them. And in this case, they were open. And we had the whole C-suite, and they were excited. But you got to be able to deliver,
Oh,
and they
yeah.
weren't able to deliver, so that fell apart. But lessons learned throughout that, definitely.
So what happened to the company, the startup?
Startup is still there. They pivoted. They got a lot of insights from the conversations that we were having at the
Mm-hmm.
C-suite level. They ended up pivoting. They pivoted their business model to something that was sort of being described in the environment that we were in. So because of the conversations that they were having at the C-suite level, they were able to take that information and basically redo their business model.
Reroute. Are they
And
still functioning?
they're
I guess they're
they're
still
still
going.
they're still functioning after all of these years. A lot of what came from this partnership as well was a lot of startups are always looking for, could you get me a letter of intention, right? There's
Yes.
an LOI to say that, hey, this organization is willing to invest in us. So what
Yep.
came out of this arrangement as well, because of the relationship, is that because the global organization had a vested interest and was saying that they're going to partner with this company, they were able to attract investment capital into their business as
And
well.
they
So they did,
survived.
yeah,
They
they've done
survived.
well. They've survived. The guys are great. Like the organization's doing well. It could have been bigger and better, but to each his
But
own.
hey, at least they learned their lesson out of the experience, right? At least
They
we hope
did.
so.
We all did. We all did.
Very good. So you mentioned startups, which is one sector, right? And with that in mind, how can small businesses with limited resources, because they don't have all the cash flow that bigger organizations have, with limited resources, effectively engage in strategic partnerships with your help or with what you do?
No, it's a great question. So at the end of the day, for any business, it doesn't matter big, small, startup, or mature. When you start looking at your client as the center focus, when you truly do that, then what ends up happening is you start looking beyond what you can do as an organization. You
Right.
start looking at what are other companies or other resources that I can bring in to provide value to my customers. So to answer your question, do you need a lot of money in order to do this partnership strategy? No, you don't. What you really need
Okay.
is to really know who your client is,
Mm-hmm.
and then build out an ecosystem of, well, what are other businesses, services, or things that can enhance and make the life better of my customer, my client that I'm working with right now. And sometimes you'll find that it's just having conversations with other people that can enhance that relationship. So I can give it to you. I'll do it from a B to, I'll use a small business example. So I'm a bookkeeping company, and
Right.
I just do the bookkeeping for a business. Well, you
Mm-hmm.
can wear that narrow hat to say, I only do bookkeeping.
Mm-hmm.
But then I look at your client, I'm saying, well, and again, you can narrow and niche down with your client, but I'm saying, okay, your client's a business owner. So you have a business that you do bookkeeping for. So what are other things that that business needs? Well, that business might need a website.
Yep.
Okay, so if that business needs a website, maybe that's a service that I can offer indirectly because I form a partnership with a website company. So if I'm working with a client now that I'm doing their books and they don't have a website, one way is for me to just partner with someone that offers websites and get them and refer them over to that individual that does the websites, and maybe I'm making money on the back end of that arrangement. But
Of
the
course.
fact is that my client is being served, they're getting value, and if I make money on that transaction because that's what I've negotiated with that website designer, then perfect. So what I do is I look at, well, what are all the other pieces that that business needs? They need website, maybe they need a content, they might need a lawyer, they might need an accountant, they might need maybe capital, investment capital.
Yep.
And you just start building sort of like this web of other types of products, services that truly can provide value to businesses. And your relationship now is, there's no cost to all of this stuff. It's about relationship, and it's building relationships with all of these types of individuals and figuring out what is that exchange of value if I give you this. That's what it really is at the end of the day. So any business right now, I truly believe that if you're a business out there, you can spend zero money on marketing and build a very successful business by putting your customer first and then figuring out who are other people that serve my customer, and then collectively looking at how do we provide value to each other. And that costs $0 in marketing.
Doesn't help me. It's funny because
strategy.
I was going to say, we're in the market of marketing, right? And I mean, you and I have been talking for a long while now. And so let me ask you this question, because this is a curveball for you, because we're speaking of strategies to grow businesses, right?
Yes.
To help them grow. And one of those pieces is always marketing, right? So how do we marry partnerships and marketing to make the whole thing more successful, right?
No, and again, so there's still value with marketing. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying you reduce your marketing to zero, because there's still branding related stuff that you can do from a marketing standpoint. I have my own philosophy around marketing. So to answer your question, one of the things that, because I look internally in terms of what is an organization sitting on, if they have existing customers, there is marketing that can be done to those existing customers that you can set up from a marketing standpoint, right?
100%.
So
yeah.
the campaigns and the strategies just change in my world. Instead of going out broadly, looking at how do we bring in, marketing for me becomes, well, we have databases, we have assets that we're sitting on right now. What kind of marketing related strategies can we do within that internal ecosystem? And there still has to be some stuff there can be stuff that can be done from a paid side of things from that, or from a partnership side from that. Like, I'm not saying you eliminate, but it's the psychology side of it though. Like, if I'm starting a business, my example, when I started my business, the first thing I want to do is I need a website.
Yeah.
I didn't think about the customer who I was targeting and the pain points and how I solved their problem. No. I need a website. So then you go out and you spend all of this money on a website because you're looking for the answers on the outside. And then you have this one beautiful website, and they're like, okay, now that I got a website, I think I need maybe Google ads or Facebook ads and whatever other ad stuff. So then that's the natural, and you start doing all that stuff, and you still haven't really figured out what value and how do I serve my clients and who else is connected and how can I do this from a minimal standpoint, because we're always looking for instant sort of results, right? Where I'm just trying to flip it around to say, before you go to all of that stuff, focus on your customer, look at other people, resources that provide value to your customers, figure out how you guys can mutually exchange value to provide value to that customer. And then once you have that system, look at systems for branding and for SEO and all that other stuff, right? It's not to say eliminate it. It's just that you can be very systematic on how you do that. You don't always have to lead with paid. You can lead with another strategy and then lead to paid.
All right. So there is a partnership opportunity.
Oh, for sure. There's always, I can't think of any business out there that there isn't a partnership opportunity, because the client, your customer, is central to everything. So it's about them and how do you enhance and make their lives better.
Yeah. All right. So on that note, what advice would you give to entrepreneurs looking to disrupt their industry through innovative business models and partnerships?
Business models and partnerships. I think a lot of people are just so used to, again, I can use a B2C business. I'm a hair salon, and as a hair salon, this is the way I operate as a hair salon. This is the way my website looks. This is the way my products look. These are the services I offer. I think nowadays it's about how do you differentiate yourself from everyone else so that you look a little bit different than everyone else. So I think when it comes to the business model, it's don't get comfortable with your existing model.
Right. Okay.
Personal example for myself is before COVID, I had a certain model. And then COVID happened, and it's like, oh my gosh, like businesses are shutting down and we're no longer going in businesses and having conversations and doing different things. And then what ended up happening, the blessing that came out of COVID, was we're in a global world right now. Oh, so that means that my market or my business model that may have been focused from a geographic standpoint, maybe I said, I'm only targeting people within 100 kilometers radius of my home or where my business is. I think the new business model is we're in a global world right now. And really, it's about your customer. So if you identify your ideal customer, that customer could be in
anywhere now.
The MENA region. It could be U.S. It could be wherever. So geography is no longer. You shouldn't be limited to geography.
Right.
With your model. Well, someone's going to say, well, Tyrone, what happens if I'm in a medical profession and I need people to come in? Well, then your business model becomes, are there services that you can provide from a virtual standpoint for those people that can't come in physically? So yes, there's ways to redo business models that can help you stay ahead. To answer your question around the partnership side, again, I don't know if it's biased or unbiased. I truly believe that 2025 and beyond, if you're looking at growing your business, you're either going to do it by leveraging partnerships, other people and their networks and their customers, or you're going to go out and acquire other businesses. The idea of being that special person that's all by yourself, that island, that's gone because of this global world we're in
right.
And that's just my take.
All right. So how do you go about, or how do you approach connecting businesses with the right resources, such as you mentioned it earlier, capital or strategic alliances?
A lot of that stuff is really just trying to figure out the business owner, what are the pain points where they're at right now, and then trying to fill in the gaps to figure out, is this something that I can help with directly, or if it's someone that I can help indirectly. So some examples that I have right now, there are startups that come to me where we can plug them into existing organizations and do those different things like the example I gave before. There are some where they're so new that we can't do that right now. Maybe they haven't developed anything from a product standpoint, where in that point we have different partner relationships that we've established. Again, relationships is key to all of this stuff, where if someone asks me something, I'll know, okay, I have a partner that they specialize in maybe raising capital or investing in this particular industry. I know with what you have right now, with what you're sharing with me, it would make sense for me to introduce you to them because you're going to get what you need from there. Then I do that. That's what I do.
Very
right?
good.
So it's not all about me at the end of the day in terms of you got to buy service. No. It's really about how do I help you get what you want at the end of the day. And I'll figure out somehow to get tied in there, because people always ask, well, how do you make money? Well, I'm usually connected somehow to whatever I create, but it's never the forefront. It's never at the forefront of the thing that I focus on. This is how I'm going to get paid. That's usually an afterthought later on.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So tell us, in your opinion, what trends do you foresee in the future of strategic partnerships, and how do we help businesses prepare for it?
I think it's really getting back to the basics of business, and which is really your ICP, your ideal client profile, and really understanding who they are, the pain points that they have, what they're looking for, how you can enhance and bring more value to their life. The world is shifting, so we went out and the world is coming back in right now. So our community is important, or building that ecosystem is another way that I look at community is of importance. So I see trends that are happening is from a branding standpoint, it's about the personal brand now, right? So it's not about the big brand anymore. It's really about who are the individuals in that brand. What do they stand for? We won't go into the political side of it and the impact it's having on some bigger brands out there, but we're moving more into the personal brands. We're moving into ecosystems where you have to build a community. And this is where I was talking about the marketing side of it. This is where it gets interesting on the marketing side, is that you're not marketing out now, you're marketing internally into that ecosystem. I can see acquisitions being a major thing where there's a lot of consolidating that happens within industries. I can see that if a lot of individuals that are by themselves, or they've never really had that collaborative kind of mindset, where they are going to be left behind, quite frankly. Because the name of the game right now, it's relationships. It's always been relationships, but it's just because we're on this global scale now, it's no longer relationships that you have to have from a geographical standpoint, like local standpoint. It's bigger now.
It's much bigger now.
It's much bigger.
Now, and you talk about local and global relationships, and we go outside of, and I know you and I are both in Canada, but you go way beyond now our boundaries of, the Canadian market. I know you're doing business all over, but, what marketplace do you focus the most in? What's your sweet spot?
So it's a loaded question because it all depends on who I'm working with. So I do have partners in Switzerland, in Africa, in like UK, Australia, US, Caribbean. So we have relationships, but it all depends on who we're working with and what they're trying to do. So that's why the focus for me is like helping someone to sell more into their existing market, or if they want to get into new markets, well, we can help with that because of the partner relationships. If I'm looking for low-hanging fruit, usually what it is that a lot of the opportunities that I'm seeing with a lot of companies now is that they want to sell into the North American market, usually U.S. So these are overseas companies that are in Israel, for instance, where I have a group in Israel right now. They've only focused on the Israeli market, but they're looking at North America as a potential market, and they typically look at like the U.S. as that starting point. So for them, the only bridge or the only connection that they have to the US or North American market is me.
Right.
So those are the opportunities that I see where people want to sell into the North American market. Yes, we can help that because of the partner relationships that we have. Or if you're a US company and you wanted to sell into the Canadian market, there's opportunities for that. Or if you're a Canadian company and you want to sell into the US market or overseas market, we can help facilitate that as well.
All right. So on that note, tell us how our audience can find you online and find more about you if they want to obviously contact you as well.
No, I appreciate that. So I'm a big LinkedIn person. So that's probably the only social platform where I'm actually active because of the target audience that I go on. So I'm on LinkedIn under my name, Tyrone Matheson or Tyrone Rainmaker Matheson. You're going to find me so they can reach out direct there at TyroneMatheson.com, Tyrone Matheson, Matheson.com. All my information's on there as well. And pretty much all the other stuff is...
Don't worry.
There's a lot of rabbit holes for everything else.
Yeah, we'll put links in the show notes so that everybody can go in and find you. But thank you so much for coming and share your experience and your advice for all the businesses out there that can benefit from your experience, and so that they can understand how partnerships can really help them grow their business. I hope that this is not the last time you come on the show with us, and hopefully we'll see you in the near future again.
And thank you for this opportunity to be able to share with your audience some of the work we're doing and how we're trying to help and change the world one business at a time. So I appreciate this opportunity. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Tyrone. I will talk to you soon.
Thank you.
Take care.